Present with us from the Center for Mindfulness and Public Safety is John McAdams, the Senior Trainer and Program Manager. He has been the host of these gatherings for the entirety of our 5 years on Zoom. Thank you, John, for your presence, your wisdom, and your guidance. I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that our friend Robert Olemiller, who has been a champion of these calls from the very beginning, maybe late joining us tonight, but obviously this community is very, just grateful for his presence and his leadership and his guidance through the years. So we also owe a big debt of gratitude to Dr. Fleet Mall, the Director of Training and Research, and Dr. Vita Perez, the Executive Director of the Center for Mindfulness and Public Safety. I now turn to you, John, for remarks and to tell us about the order of things for the evening. John?
Great. Thank you, Katie. And again, here we are at the Mindful Public Safety Hour. It's true, it's been 5 years. The original purpose for putting this together and trying to be of service was, of course, if we can remember back to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and all the work that we had been doing in person was shut down. And so we knew that there were potentially sort of voids in the kind of wellness support that could be available to first responders really across all of North America. So we wanted to, in some small way, at least provide an environment and a place where people could come be in community, have some practice together, share challenges, and share what was working for them. So I'm extremely happy that we've been able to continue through here for 5 years. We're entering our 6th year. Now, we're literally going to flip the script tonight in terms of how we generally run these programs. And with the 5th anniversary, we have some prompt questions, and we're going to offer those up, and we're going to go into breakout rooms and be able to discuss those amongst ourselves. And as always, we're going to do our best to honor everyone's time, complete by 9 o'clock. But as as you consider these prompts and have your conversation, we would invite you, once we come back into the large group, that we can share some of the insights or some of the thoughts and ideas that will come up in your conversations. These are prompts that, of course, have been written by Robert Olemiller, the champ of prompts. Robert has been providing us prompts for 5 years, and they're always thought-provoking. So the first one here: what changes have you observed, experienced, and perhaps led in public safety wellness over the past 5 years? Number 2, what specific programs, practices, or research have been most impactful? And number 3, what does the future look like for public safety wellness? Welcome back. Just a reminder that when you come back to these rooms, there's an automatic muting of your microphone. Please feel encouraged to unmute and contribute whatever you'd like. So would anybody, Katie, from your side, anybody want to report, or would somebody like to talk about what your discussions were?
I'm going to reiterate what I just said as we were closing. Katie pretty much did a fairly in-depth discussion on her path and all of the things that she's done and accomplished in these last 5 years, which was really what the question was. And she did it eloquently and covered everything.
I took the whole time accidentally. I thought we were having more time in the room.
But I'll throw something in because 5 years is an interesting component. Of course, well, not of course, but I started practicing a couple of decades ago, a little over that. And, I moved into prison work in 2009, and we had a yoga and meditation group that we were offering volunteering in a couple of prisons, and I'm still doing that. So that was my entry into this world from, let's say, my meditation practice to the corrections. And then in 2020, which is the 5-year question for us, that's when I got introduced to the Center for Mindfulness and Public Safety and was offered the opportunity to facilitate the MBWR program, which was fabulous. And it's just kind of evolved. I've been on the Monday night call for all 5 years since it started, and that's celebrated its 5th anniversary. I didn't get to this program till a couple of years or more later. But, to answer the question, it's just you could see this evolution. Like I say, Katie, you're a perfect example. Your life story for this period of time is the whole story of this change. And, what's the most, let's say, dominant factor is the MBWR program, which I was fortunate enough to be asked to facilitate, and to see the influence. And I have to say this because I was invited to participate in a Canadian retreat on this week from the MBWR program here in Canada with corrections officers, probation and parole, and there were 30 people present. And if you were there present for the final go around of what people were taking away from a weekend silent retreat, you would have heard it graphically of how this has impacted people's lives. And there's no doubt of the efficacy and the transformational power of this program. And this particular program we're on right now, the Mindful Public Safety Hour. I'm sorry, Robert's not here, but I'll see the recording for sure. But, for people that dedicate so much of their time and effort to try and keep this thing alive and growing is, well, heartwarming and encouraging. And we know what it's done. Anybody who's been in this world has seen it firsthand, and it's terrific. So that's it for me.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think one of the things that I've seen change, and I think that Katie Carlson and Gary Cornelius are just prime examples of this, is I think the sophistication of the training and the approach. I can just give you a tiny example. When we, well, actually, before my time, I've been working with Fleet Mall as a trainer, co-lead trainer for about 7 or 8 years now. But before I happened on the scene, I believe, Christine, it was when he was working initially in Oregon, the first sort of big rollout and further development of the program. It's still, it's at its core, it's the same program, but he got a little pushback at one point. He was doing a skills training, and it was, I don't know exactly what the training was, but the feedback he got from some CEOs were, you're trying to get us to relax so we get hurt. Right. And so clearly that wasn't the intention, but that's what got picked up. Right. So I think there's clearly a sophistication in terms of what's being delivered as skills-based, tools-based, that we're really enhancing. I just listened to Katie's podcast that she did. I saw it posted on LinkedIn, Katie. I can't remember the two individuals, Sam and somebody else. And you were, as Gary said, incredibly eloquent about what mindfulness is and what it isn't, and the ideas of awareness and how we can enhance our lives, enhance our situational awareness, and just allow us to perform better and safer and actually have a happier life. Is kind of a simplistic way to put it, but that really hit home, I know, for Fleet, and we've talked about it a number of times. This is not about relaxing. It's about, managing. And if it's time to relax, you can manage yourself to relax. If it's time to manage yourself up to meet a crisis or a critical incident, then you manage yourself up, right? So it's really that empowerment agency of recognizing where I am and then being able to put myself where it's most appropriate for the environment. So I think that's a change that is really valid, and I think it brings more validity to the training. And Gary, you've had so much, Gary Cornelius, you've had so much experience. I know that you've written a number of books, and your work around manipulation. I would imagine for CEOs, that's kind of like people don't want to talk about that either. People don't want to talk about the stress that they have, and they don't want to talk about getting hoodwinked.
Thanks. I think that's a valid point, and that is true what you said about CEOs and people's saying, if I relax, I'm going to get hurt because of the hypervigilance. I mean, one of my classes, I always go into, when you lock up your house at night, you're locking it up like it's a unit in a jail. To me, I take the approach, and you might want to consider this, of recharging yourself mentally so you're heading away from burnout, because burned out people never relax. They're always thinking bad things about the job, the stress of the job, how I hate the job, and it goes on and on and on. And if you never relax, you never give yourself a mental recharge. You never see what's good in life, your family, your friends, you never appreciate the good things. You're always thinking of the bad things. But that's interesting because a lot of officers said, when the EAPs first started, okay, employee assistance programs first started, some officers wouldn't go because they thought the higher ups are going to find out what they were talking about. And if you read the study, it's in the book, the one at Berkeley, I put in the California study, and it's a high percentage of officers don't use the employee assistance programs, which talk about relaxation. Take your mind off the job, recharge yourself, and that's a good point, very, very good point. And we have to hammer that home of you're recharging yourself, you're refocusing. Nobody wants you to take a 30-minute nap at your post, into jail. But you just want to give your mind a break, and there's ways you can do this. And so that's good. That's a good point to talk about relaxation and those couple of things.
I
Katie locked up on me.
Yeah, she froze.
She froze up. It's too bad. Sherry, what's your perspective?
Well, in listening to this, I would offer, and I don't, pushback is great, but it would appear to me that one would be much less safe if they were not able to relax, if they were not able to recognize the signs of impending danger because they are preoccupied or under a tremendous amount of stress. So when I'm listening to this from my discipline, when we cannot become aware of what's going on in our body or relax, whatever term, we're much more at risk for danger, for things to happen. Relaxing and alertness are two very different things. So that's kind of where I'm seeing this. We want people to, in a therapeutic situation, we want people to remain alert, heightened alert of what is going on in your body, which is enabling you to relax and keep yourself alert and safe. So that's just kind of what I picked up from. It's contrary to what I do, keeping someone so stressed.
know I froze a little bit earlier. I was just saying, I didn't realize until today or until now, I never ever use the word relax when I teach, not in the classroom, not when I'm walking through meditate or anything like that. I often will have, when in dialogue afterwards, people often will tell me that it's relaxing. But all we do is all I encourage people to do is direct. Really, you were using the word manage, John. I kind of use the word direct, like, where is your energy going, and really kind of encouraging people to find, those the balance. And I think one of the most that I mean it's not I think it is one of the most protective factors of trauma resilience is people's relationships with their families and with the people that are the closest to them. And so directing over and over, I always am reminding people, like, this is like, this isn't all about you. It's not like, this is about your how you show up at home, and how you take this and just who you are for your family. And it's like, do you want to be that jerk? Like, do you want to take the hard stuff out on them, or do you want a way that you can regulate your nervous system? And so regulate is probably what I use more than relax. Regulate and direct, I would say, are my two main words. And I think it helps me at the academy level, because if I was there telling, everyone to relax, and their instructors might be like, but when you use these other kind of more directive terms, then
Yeah.
it's a little bit more accessible, but then the outcome ends up being the same.
And that's when we use mindfulness or anything, like when we are in a therapeutic situation or whatever, that enables thought processes and enables much more clarity and the ability to think logically. So it does almost fly in the face of what we're doing, because relaxing does bring, or whatever word you want to use. I can see where maybe the word relax, if it's misunderstood, could really be concerning. But the ability to think, the ability to use logic, the ability to have your mind be clear is what we are after. And that's what mindfulness does, clears the mind so that the appropriate logical thought processes can happen. And then you can access your thought content much more easily.
Yeah, we really emphasize, that cognitive piece, and how when we're at a certain level of activation, if it's too high a level of activation, then we really go into survival mode.
Right.
So whether that's, hypervigilance, or it's just, people call it all kind of, red line, right? I'm at red line. And when we're at red line, there's a level of perceived threat that just kind of puts the brain into survival mode. So we're not thinking as clearly. So if we can, we talk about down regulating maybe just a step or two, where we're still highly activated. We're very much present and active, but we've got our cognition back online. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from Troy, if you're able to talk in the car. Troy brings a number of these techniques into training. Academy.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm kind of like Katie, trying to explain it the correct way to recruits, because yes, relaxation, unless I'm in an actual class that we are teaching relaxation or down regulation, because we will teach, and I will teach NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, things when they are trying to unwind when they get home, but obviously on the job, like John stated. How can you start to notice in your body when you're either too elevated or maybe not elevated enough, how you can kind of up-regulate yourself or slightly down-regulate? Because for an officer, when they get too high of heart rate or too stressed, obviously we know peripheral vision will dissipate, fine motor skills, their driving skills will start to dissipate. So getting them to understand that, and what I try to do at times, being the strength coach, is we will put some of that in with conditioning training. So we'll take them up to a pretty high threshold on a bike or something of that nature, and then go to some cognitive based skills, finding numbers, doing some simple tasks with fine motor skills. So they have to work on their ability to regulate their breath. So doing some basic breath regulation, maybe a straw breath, they like box breathing, what have you, but just getting them to key up, do the BAMO breath, the breathe and move on, which is the simple act of taking a breath before they key the radio. So they may have a clearer mind. Doesn't not mean they're going to be a perfect mind, but their ability to be possibly a little more focused and having that little space before they become too reactive. But then again, certain situations, they're just going to have to react and just go. But yes, I'm very cognizant too, like Katie, of what are we trying to state so they understand. Oh, we're not just relaxing. We're trying to, bring our focus back to the present. What is my task at hand? Can I troubleshoot in this situation when it's rapidly evolving? So building that situation awareness and then self-aware officer of what is going on in their body. Can I pick up that spidey sense, as we may say, going up to a car? Am I noticing hands? Am I noticing all of these things? Or am I too hyper-focused and too stressed? Trying to get them to be able to flow, basically, be in that flow state. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks. One of the ways we translate that is the idea of being in a self-leadership role, right? Or leadership role in our own life. Being in the co-pilot seat of our life, right? We can't control everything, but that's where the gold is, right? If we actually have some amount of agency and empowerment and control over this thing, the physiology, that puts us in much more control of the neurological thing and the cognition and the emotions that follow. We have a great little video, some law enforcement trainers out of Oregon talking about people who'd gone through a year of mindfulness training. And as trainers, they were saying, this is the kind of thing, if we're thinking about, what's going on at with the family from last weekend, and we're worried about, what's going to be happening next week, we may miss what they call pre-assault indicators, right? If we're not really there with that situational awareness, so we can have some situational awareness around us, but if we're not aware of what's going on in here and that I'm distracted, right, then we can miss some stuff. Yeah. Welcome, Michael Christie.
The other component is, and I would imagine that there's a tremendous amount of trauma response. If we have to be able to use mindfulness when I'm working with trauma, because we don't want the flashback response. We don't want that. We want to be able to have the clarity to say, this is the trigger is happening, and we need to be able to have the clarity to say, yes, I understand you're trying to keep me safe, but this is different than the trauma that I'm responding to. I'm responding to something in the present moment. Here's how it's different. And that's the clarity that comes in that keeps people safe.
I like that. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Dr. Michael Christie has joined us. Michael, I actually sent you the prompts. The way, this is our 5th anniversary session. I think that you're familiar with that. And so Robert has put these prompts together. And if you have any thoughts or input that you'd like to offer up around what changes have you observed and experienced over the past 5 years in terms of wellness with your work at, just so you know, Michael is a supervising chaplain with the Connecticut Department of Corrections. Anyways, I'll open it up to you, Michael.
Yeah, give me a few minutes to just settle in.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Get
Well,
caught Mhm.
One thing that I wanted to just bring up to us while we're here, we still have a little over 10 minutes, is starting next week is National Corrections Officers and Employees Week. And ACA is doing some celebrations through their publications, their social media, and they've requested a whole bunch of people across the field if there's anything they could offer up as a I don't know, something to just sort of celebrate and acknowledge corrections officers and employees and their week. So I have no idea how it would work on Zoom, but I thought that we could just kind of have everybody open their mic and we could all say, I wanted to put this in the chat though, so that we could actually know what to say together. I thought we could all say it together. The audio might be horrible, but
John, I
Yeah.
have a suggestion.
okay, please.
One, do you think that is there any way that we can put the view or record in the gallery view, or does it always record in the gallery view?
I think it's always recording in gallery
Okay.
view because I haven't done any spotlighting.
Yeah. Okay, I think so too. I think it would make more sense if somebody said, this is, the weekful mind. This is the mindful public safety hour. Wishing you a happy corrections week, and then if we all waved and said thank you, rather than all trying to say that long line together.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the audio also will kind of just all chop each other off. And
Yeah.
I've been in groups that have tried to sing together, and it's just got awful. It doesn't.
Yeah. So I would nominate you to set it up, and then all of us say thank you at the same time.
Okay. Well, I've got that. I've got that right there. So if you all are willing, we'll take this in chunk and we'll just cut it out at the middle. So it is recording right now. So we could even do a couple of takes. I got all my Hollywood history, 25 years in the business, but we'll see if we can get it one take. So from the Mindful Public Safety Hour, we want to say happy National Corrections Officers and Employees Week. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. How was that, Michael? Good one take? Yeah. Good. Thanks, everybody. And I did want to also just remind us that we do have Kimball's responses to these. I don't want to read those out. That'll just take us a couple of minutes. But I'm going to share some slides. We just made slides of what he wrote into us. If I go to slideshow there, and then I go over here. So that was that. So in theory, this is going to now cycle through. Okay, so regarding what changes have you observed, experienced, and perhaps led in public safety wellness over the past 5 years? Kimball Richardson. So Kimball is in Indianapolis, a very close colleague of Katie and of Troy. And as I say, great supporter of Mindful Public Safety Hour. Quote from Kimball: I've been fortunate to have been involved in national efforts to benefit public safety wellness. When I joined mindfulness and public safety meetings, I also joined the ECHO project in resilience. I was able to offer presentations for both programs, weekly virtual meetings. I was invited to work on 3 federal grants, one still ongoing with the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services, and published 4 scientific papers and 1 workbook. Wow, I did not. Kimball is a busy guy. Now Katie, he's a system trainer as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So regarding specific programs, practice, research, he's been most impactful. So we'll share these slides with you all who are on the screen, but these are articles, he says, may not be the most impactful, but they're ones that he had helped to write or was the primary author. So there are a number here, and we'll get those to you if you want to look at those further. And then from the third question, what does the future look like for public safety wellness? Kimball says, I think the future looks good. Public safety professionals professionals continuously search for new and innovative approaches to issues. I'm pleasantly surprised by how public safety has embraced wellness over the past 5 years. We have a good future of seeing our professionals remain in good health and in service to their fellow brothers and sisters. So that's contribution from Kimball.
Well, you only have 7 minutes left, so I don't know if I'll say much.
Well, we've been yakking the whole hour. We haven't done much. Katie did a lovely opening reflective practice, 1 breath per year. It's great.
Katie has been yakking, you said?
No, we've all been yakking, but the only practice we did was Katie's 5 breath practice, and it was great.
6, 1 to grow on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and the first question, changes I've observed. I think there's more awareness about trauma and the need for mindfulness, breath work in these facilities. I still think they're struggling to make space for it. There's a conflict with culture, with the correctional culture, and feeling comfortable with making the space for wellness, for mental health wellness. They talk a good game. They say it's important to them, but they don't actually do anything to make staff feel safe enough to do it. I had a presentation at one of our max prisons, and I was supposed to talk about nonviolent communication, and nobody wanted to hear it because they didn't trust. We were talking about mindfulness and nonviolent communication. They're like, yeah, we don't feel safe that we can actually pause and go sit down somewhere and breathe. But to my surprise, there was a law that was passed in Connecticut that give staff 40 hours to essentially use for whatever they want, but it sounds like it was primarily for mental health. So if they wanted an hour break, the supervisors couldn't ding them for pausing for an hour to go and recuperate while on the job. In the past, they could get in trouble, they can get written up, but now there's some legislative protection for them to be able to do that within reason, I imagine. So that's some of the changes in terms of that I'm seeing happening. Question number 2 was specific programs. I like to use the combination of mindfulness. Well, mindfulness kind of undergirds all the other programs that I would do. The ones that I'm fond of is, NVC training and mindfulness work. And then the third question is the future. I think as the whole mental health space explodes in our face in terms of the growth and the acknowledgement of it, and folks not become more comfortable, but become more comfortable with the stigma of what's considered a stigma of mental health and reach out more, that I think it will force the hand of organizations like the DOC to really start to incorporate. I think the generation that is coming in, the next 2 generations that's going to come in, is probably going to be the one that really makes this more of a staple, to shift the culture, if anything, because they're much more open to it. They've grown up with this whole sense of mental health being important. The folks that are still there now are kind of old heads that are holding on to the old, paramilitary way of tough it out type of thing. I think that's probably going to die out with the newer generation that is coming in. So those are my few thoughts.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I think, when we look at everybody on this screen, I think we just keep going. We just keep working. At some point, critical mass is going to be struck, right? And I think it's going to flip. And it doesn't need to be a huge percentage, but when we keep reaching individuals who are on the front line and managers who are supervising them and executives who are running these organizations. We're here because we know it works, right? We're here because we've seen it work. And I just want to appreciate everybody who just keeps showing up and plugging away and doing their work and learning new ways to do their work. And I feel in the future, critical mass will be hit at some point, and I think that the results from criminal justice will shift. I think that they'll shift. I think they'll become more human oriented and human based, and we'll get better results. And I think we'll have literally a safer culture and a safer community throughout all aspects of the community. You know, people who end up coming out of prisons angry and, not able to establish a decent life for themselves. We just keep getting back into that cycle. So I appreciate everybody. And really, again, I do want to say that I so much appreciate Robert's work. Robert spent 42 years in the criminal justice system. The man has an incredible stamina to continue to pursue this work. And without him, this Wednesday evening wouldn't have continued the way it does. So I know he's reached out to each and every one of you individually and asked for presentations, and you've been kind enough to offer your time. So I want to appreciate Robert and appreciate all of you for being here. And 5 more years. 5 more years. We can do it. We can do it. Maybe we'll hit critical mass in under 5 years. But keep doing what you do, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Happy 5 years.
Good to
Thanks
see
to
you all.
Robert.